Professor Martin Hayes walked into the advanced quantum mathematics classroom with his usual confident stride. He had been teaching at Stellar Academy for 20 years and believed he knew exactly which students belonged there and which ones did not. The morning sun filtered through the large windows of the lecture hall as 30 students settled into their seats. Among them sat Maya Johnson, a 15-year-old girl with dark skin and bright, intelligent eyes. She was one of the youngest students in the program and one of only 3 black students in the entire advanced mathematics department. The year was 2287, and humanity had spread across 12 star systems, building colonies on distant planets and establishing trade routes through the depths of space. Technology had advanced beyond the wildest dreams of previous generations. Ships could travel faster than light, and humans lived on worlds circling alien suns. But despite all this progress, some old problems still existed. Some people still judged others by the color of their skin, rather than the content of their character. Professor Hayes began his lecture on quantum mathematics and its applications to space travel. He wrote complex equations on the holographic display that floated in the air before the class. The symbols glowed with a soft blue light as they hung suspended in 3-dimensional space. Students took notes on their personal tablets while Hayes explained how mathematical formulas could predict the behavior of ships traveling through wormholes. Maya listened carefully, her mind working through each equation as the professor presented it. She had always loved mathematics. Numbers made sense to her in a way that few other things did. There was no ambiguity in math, no room for prejudice or unfair judgment. An equation was either correct or it was not. The truth could be proven with logic and reason. When Professor Hayes asked a question about wormhole stability, Maya raised her hand. She had been studying these concepts for months and knew she could contribute to the discussion. Hayes looked at her raised hand and something flickered across his face. It might have been annoyance or perhaps something darker. He had never liked Maya, though she had done nothing to deserve his dislike except exist in his classroom. He believed she was only there because of special admission programs, not because of her actual talent. This belief was completely wrong, but Hayes held on to it anyway. "Miss Johnson," he said with a thin smile that did not reach his eyes, "you seem very confident today. Perhaps you would like to demonstrate your knowledge for the class." He turned to the holographic display and began entering a new equation. His fingers moved quickly across the controls as symbols and numbers appeared in the air. The other students began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. They recognized what was happening. This was not a normal teaching moment. This was Professor Hayes trying to embarrass Maya in front of everyone. The equation that appeared was enormous. It filled the entire display with layer upon layer of complex mathematical operations. This was not a problem meant for undergraduate students. Even graduate students would struggle with something this difficult. It involved 13-dimensional calculus applied to faster-than-light navigation through unstable space-time corridors. The equation required understanding of quantum mechanics, relativistic physics, advanced calculus, and theoretical mathematics that most people spent years studying. Hayes had deliberately chosen something he believed Maya could not possibly solve. "This is a practical problem we face in deep space navigation," Hayes said, his voice dripping with false encouragement. "Ships traveling through the Kepler expanse often encounter dimensional instabilities. If you can solve this equation, you will show us how to keep those ships safe. I'm sure someone of your confidence can handle it." The classroom fell completely silent. Every student understood what was happening. This was cruel. This was unfair. Several students looked at Maya with sympathy. Others looked down at their desks, uncomfortable with witnessing this moment. Kevin Miller, one of the top students in the class, frowned at the equation and shook his head slightly. He had tried similar problems before and knew how difficult they were. Amy Chen, another excellent student, bit her lip nervously. She felt bad for Maya but did not know what to do. Maya stood up slowly. Her chair scraped slightly against the floor, and the sound seemed very loud in the silent room. She walked toward the front of the classroom with steady steps. Her heart was beating fast, but her face remained calm. She had dealt with people like Professor Hayes before. She had faced doubt and prejudice her entire life. Some people saw her skin color before they saw her mind. Some people assumed she was less capable simply because she looked different from them. These assumptions were foolish and wrong, but they existed nonetheless. Maya had learned not to let such prejudice stop her. Instead, she let it motivate her. She would show Professor Hayes and everyone else exactly what she was capable of. As she approached the holographic display, Maya studied the equation carefully. Her eyes moved across each symbol and number, taking in the structure of the problem. Other students expected her to hesitate or ask for help. Professor Hayes crossed his arms and waited for her to admit defeat. He expected her to say she could not do it, that it was too hard, that she needed more time. He wanted her to feel small and embarrassed. He wanted to prove his belief that she did not belong in his classroom. But Maya did neither of these things. Instead, she reached out and began manipulating the holographic display. Her fingers moved through the air, touching the glowing symbols and rearranging them. She started working through the equation with careful precision. The numbers began to shift and change as she applied mathematical operations to them. Professor Hayes's smile began to fade as he watched her work. She was not guessing or trying random approaches. She was methodically solving the problem step by step. Her movements were confident and sure. She understood what she was doing. The other students leaned forward in their seats, watching with growing amazement. Maya worked quietly, occasionally murmuring numbers under her breath. Her mind was completely focused on the mathematics before her. Everything else faded away. There was only the problem and the solution waiting to be found. Maya's fingers continued to dance through the holographic interface as she worked through the complex equation that Professor Hayes had given her. The classroom remained completely silent except for the soft electronic sounds of the display responding to her touches. Every student watched her with intense focus. Some were amazed, others were confused, and a few were starting to understand that something remarkable was happening. Maya herself was completely absorbed in the mathematics. She had entered that special state of mind that mathematicians sometimes reach, where the world falls away and only pure thought remains. The numbers spoke to her in their own language, revealing patterns and relationships that others might miss. After about 3 minutes of steady work, Maya paused and tilted her head slightly. She had found something interesting. Her eyes moved back to the beginning of the equation and she studied it again with fresh understanding. Then she did something that shocked everyone in the room. She started erasing parts of the equation. Professor Hayes stepped forward with alarm on his face. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "You cannot just remove parts of the problem." Maya turned to look at him calmly. "The problem assumes a constant gravitational coefficient across all 13 dimensions," she said. Her voice was steady and clear. "But that assumption is incorrect. In 13-dimensional space, we need to account for quantum fluctuations across dimensions 5 through 9. Without these adjustments, the equation cannot be solved accurately." Professor Hayes opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. What Maya had just said was correct. He knew it was correct even though he had hoped she would not notice. The equation he had given her was based on the Peterson model, a theoretical framework developed in 2251. That model had been widely used for decades in navigation calculations. However, in 2279, a series of experiments conducted by Dr. Zhao had shown that the Peterson model contained a fundamental flaw. It did not properly account for quantum fluctuations in higher dimensions. Most people still used the Peterson model anyway because the math was simpler, and the difference was usually small. But in the specific type of problem Hayes had given Maya, that flaw made the equation technically unsolvable. Hayes had known this when he created the problem. He had deliberately given her something that could not be solved, expecting her to waste time trying before eventually giving up in frustration. But Maya had not only recognized the flaw, she was now correcting it. She worked quickly, rebuilding the equation with new terms that accounted for the dimensional fluctuations. Her corrections were based on the Chen-Okafor theorem, a piece of advanced mathematics that was usually not taught until graduate school. Somehow Maya not only knew about this theorem but understood how to apply it. She integrated it into the equation using recursive harmonics, a technique so complex that even Professor Hayes had to concentrate hard to follow what she was doing. The holographic display filled with new symbols as Maya transformed the unsolvable problem into something elegant and correct. The other students began to whisper among themselves. Kevin Miller was staring at the display with wide eyes, his mouth slightly open. He had studied the Chen-Okafor theorem last semester and barely understood it. Watching Maya apply it so smoothly to a practical problem was incredible. Amy Chen had pulled out her tablet and was frantically taking notes, trying to capture every step of Maya's solution. She realized she was witnessing something important, something that would be talked about for years to come. Several other students had activated their neural links to record what was happening. They knew their friends would never believe this story without proof. Maya worked for 8 minutes total. That may not seem like a long time, but for a problem this complex, it was astonishingly fast. A graduate student might have needed hours to work through all the calculations Maya had completed. A professional mathematician might have needed days. Yet this 15-year-old girl had done it in less time than it took to eat lunch. When she finally stepped back from the display, the solution hung in the air before her, glowing with soft blue light. The mathematics was beautiful in its completeness. Every term balanced perfectly. Every variable was accounted for. The equation was not just solved, it was optimized. Maya had found the most efficient possible solution to the problem. Professor Hayes stared at the display. His face had gone pale. He checked the mathematics carefully, looking for any error, any mistake he could point out. But there was nothing wrong. The solution was perfect. Actually, it was better than perfect. Maya had not just solved his trick question. She had fixed the fundamental flaw he had built into it. She had taken a problem designed to humiliate her and turned it into a demonstration of exceptional skill. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Kevin Miller started clapping. The sound of his applause echoed through the silent classroom. Amy Chen joined him immediately, clapping enthusiastically. Within seconds, the entire class was applauding. Students stood up from their desks, giving Maya a standing ovation. Some were clapping so hard their hands must have hurt. Others were cheering and calling out encouragement. Maya stood at the front of the room, looking slightly surprised by the response. She had been so focused on the mathematics that she had almost forgotten about the other people in the room. Now she became aware of all the eyes on her, all the attention focused her way. She felt her cheeks grow warm, but she held her head high. She had done nothing wrong. She had simply solved the problem that had been given to her. If Professor Hayes had not expected her to succeed, that was his mistake, not hers. The professor himself looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. His face had turned red and his hands were clenched at his sides. He had tried to embarrass Maya, and instead had embarrassed himself in front of his entire class. His prejudice had been exposed for everyone to see. He had assumed Maya was not smart enough to belong in his classroom, and she had just proven she was smarter than him. That is correct, Hayes finally managed to say. His voice came out tight and strained. The solution is correct. He could not quite bring himself to congratulate her or admit how impressive her work had been. Instead, he turned away from the display and spoke quickly. Class dismissed. We will continue tomorrow. The students began gathering their belongings, but nobody rushed to leave. They clustered around Maya, asking questions about her solution and congratulating her on what she had done. Maya answered their questions patiently, explaining the mathematical concepts she had used. The recordings of Maya solving the impossible equation spread through the Academy network within an hour. By that evening, the video had reached the Planetary Education database. By the next morning, people across 3 different star systems were watching the moment when a 15-year-old girl had quietly destroyed her professor's attempt to humiliate her. The video showed everything clearly. It showed Professor Hayes giving Maya an equation designed to be unsolvable. It showed her calm walk to the front of the classroom. Most importantly, it showed her methodically identifying the flaw in the problem and fixing it while solving it at the same time. The internet loved everything about the story. Here was a young black girl facing prejudice from someone in authority. Here was that authority figure trying to use his power to make her look foolish. And here was the girl responding not with anger or complaints, but with pure, undeniable excellence. She had let her intelligence speak for itself. Comments flooded in from all over human space. Mathematics professors analyzed her solution and declared it brilliant. Students shared their own stories of facing prejudice in academic settings. Parents showed the video to their children as an example of how to respond to unfair treatment with grace and skill. News outlets picked up the story and ran segments about Maya Johnson and her remarkable achievement. Some focused on the mathematical aspects of what she had done. Others discussed the social implications of a teacher trying to embarrass a minority student. Everyone agreed that Maya had handled the situation perfectly. Within 3 days, Maya Johnson had become famous across the human colonies. People recognized her when she walked through the academy campus. Other students wanted to meet her and talk with her. Professors who had never paid attention to her before suddenly wanted to discuss her research interests. Maya found all the attention somewhat overwhelming, but she handled it with the same calm grace she had shown in Professor Hayes's classroom. The Academy administration did not ignore what had happened. Dean Lisa Wong called an emergency meeting with Professor Hayes the day after the video went viral. The meeting took place in her office, a large room with windows overlooking the Academy grounds. Dean Wong was a small woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had built her reputation on fairness and academic excellence. She did not tolerate discrimination in her institution. "Explain to me what you were thinking," she said to Hayes as he sat across from her desk. Her voice was cold with controlled anger. Hayes tried to defend himself. He claimed he had simply been challenging a bright student, pushing her to reach her full potential. Dean Wong was not fooled. She had watched the video multiple times. She had seen the smirk on Hayes's face when he gave Maya the problem. She had heard the tone in his voice. This had not been teaching, it had been bullying. "You gave her an equation based on a disproven model," Wong said. "You knew it could not be solved as written. You were not testing her knowledge, you were setting her up to fail. That is not what we do at this academy." Hayes argued that Maya had solved it anyway, so no harm was done. Wong shook her head. "The fact that she succeeded despite your attempt to humiliate her does not excuse your behavior. You are suspended pending a full review of your conduct. You will not teach any classes until we determine whether you can continue at this institution." Hayes left the meeting angry and defensive, but there was nothing he could do. The evidence against him was clear and public. While the Academy dealt with Professor Hayes, something else was happening that would prove far more important. Maya's solution had caught the attention of people outside the academic world. The Frontier Fleet was humanity's deep space exploration force, responsible for discovering new worlds and protecting human colonies from dangers. The fleet employed thousands of scientists who worked on practical problems of space travel and survival. One of these scientists was Dr. Raymond Cole, the chief mathematician for the entire Frontier Fleet. Cole was a tall man in his 60s with gray hair and a face lined by years of staring at complex equations. He had been working on navigation problems for 30 years. When he saw Maya's solution to Professor Hayes's equation, something clicked in his mind. For the past 2 years, the Frontier Fleet had been losing ships in a region of space called the Kepler Expanse. This was an area roughly 15 light-years across where space itself seemed unstable. Ships entering the expanse would sometimes disappear without any warning. No distress signals, no debris, just gone. 6 ships had been lost so far with all hands. The fleet's best scientists had been trying to understand what was happening in the expanse and how to navigate through it safely. They had made little progress. The mathematics of the situation were incredibly complex, and their models kept failing to predict the dangerous areas. But Maya's solution used concepts that Cole had not considered before. Her approach to handling dimensional fluctuations was exactly what his team needed. If her mathematics could be applied to the Kepler expanse problem, they might finally be able to save lives. Cole immediately requested permission to visit Stellar Academy. 3 days later, he arrived on campus in a fleet shuttle. The sight of a Frontier Fleet vessel landing at the Academy caused quite a stir. Students gathered to watch as the sleek silver ship settled onto the landing pad. Dr. Cole emerged wearing his fleet uniform, a dark blue jumpsuit with various insignia indicating his rank and position. He was escorted to Dean Wong's office where Maya was waiting for him. She had been told only that an important fleet officer wanted to speak with her about her mathematics work. When Cole entered the room, Maya stood up politely. The dean made introductions and then left them alone to talk. Cole got straight to the point. He explained about the Kepler expanse and the ships that had been lost there. He pulled up holographic displays showing sensor data from the region. The displays floated in the air between them, showing star charts and complex readings that most people would find incomprehensible. "Your solution to that classroom problem," Cole said, "used mathematics that might apply to our situation. The dimensional fluctuations you accounted for match the kind of instabilities we see in the expanse. We have been trying to solve this problem for 2 years using traditional navigation mathematics. But maybe we have been using the wrong approach." He looked at Maya seriously. "Miss Johnson, I am here to ask for your help. Would you be willing to work with my team on this problem? We need your mathematical insight. More importantly, we need it soon. Every month we delay is another month that ships might be lost." Maya sat quietly for a moment, thinking. She was 15 years old and still in school. This man was asking her to help with real frontier fleet operations, with life and death situations. Part of her felt overwhelmed by the responsibility, but another part of her felt excited. This was exactly the kind of work she had dreamed of doing someday. She had always wanted her mathematics to mean something, to help people and make a real difference in the world. Maya looked at Dr. Cole and made her decision. "I will help you," she said, "but I need complete access to all your data about the Expanse. I need sensor readings, navigation logs from the lost ships, everything you have. I cannot solve this problem with incomplete information." Cole smiled, clearly pleased with her answer. "You will have full access to our database," he promised. "I will arrange clearance for you immediately. How soon can you begin?" Maya thought about her school schedule and her other commitments. Then she realized that none of that mattered right now. Ships were being lost. People were dying. Her mathematics might be able to save lives. "I can start today," she said. Within hours, arrangements were made. Dean Wong agreed to give Maya special permission to work with the Frontier Fleet. Her professors agreed to send coursework she could complete remotely. Maya's parents, after a long conversation about safety and responsibility, gave their blessing for her to join a fleet mission. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in the docking bay of Earth Station 7, watching as crew members loaded supplies onto the FSS Horizon. The Horizon was a mid-sized research vessel, about 300 meters long with a crew of 47 people. It was painted in the standard fleet colors of dark blue and silver. The ship's hull was covered with sensor arrays and scientific instruments. This was not a warship built for combat, but a science vessel designed for exploration and discovery. Captain Nicole Sanders came to greet Maya personally. Sanders was a woman in her early 40s with short brown hair and the confident bearing of someone who had spent 20 years commanding ships in deep space. She wore her uniform with casual ease, and her handshake was firm and warm. "Welcome aboard, Miss Johnson," Sanders said. "I have read your work, and I am impressed. If your calculations are correct, we might finally map a safe route through the Expanse. That would cut travel time to the Andromeda colonies by 3 months and save countless lives." Maya was shown to her quarters, a small but comfortable cabin with a bed, desk, and personal bathroom. The walls were painted a calming light gray, and there was a window showing the stars outside. She unpacked her belongings and then reported to the navigation section where she would be working. The navigation section was located near the ship's bridge and contained banks of computers and holographic displays. Lieutenant Danny Foster was the ship's chief navigator, a young man with red hair and freckles who looked like he should still be in college. Despite his youthful appearance, Foster was an expert in his field with 7 years of deep space experience. He greeted Maya with enthusiasm and showed her the navigation systems she would be using. Also assigned to work with Maya was Dr. Helen Price, an astrophysicist in her 50s who specialized in spatial anomalies. Price was a heavyset woman with gray streaks in her black hair and a warm smile. She had been studying the Kepler Expanse for 18 months and knew more about it than almost anyone. The three of them formed a team, working together to integrate Maya's mathematical theories into the ship's navigation computers. For the first week of the voyage, while the Horizon traveled toward the Expanse at faster than light speeds, Maya immersed herself in the data. She studied sensor readings from the 6 ships that had been lost. She analyzed space-time measurements from probes that had been sent into the Expanse and returned. She examined every piece of information the fleet had collected about the region. The more she studied, the more she became convinced that her mathematical approach was correct. The instabilities in the Expanse were caused by fluctuations in higher dimensions that normal navigation systems could not detect or account for. Working closely with Danny Foster, Maya began programming her equations into the ship's navigation computer. This was not a simple task. The navigation systems were complex and had been designed around traditional mathematics. Integrating her new approach required rewriting significant portions of the core programming. Maya worked 12 hours a day, taking breaks only to eat and sleep. She was driven by the knowledge that her work mattered. If she failed, the Horizon might become the 7th ship lost in the Expanse. If she succeeded, she would open a safe path through dangerous space. Dr. Price helped by providing real-time data analysis and checking Maya's calculations. The older scientist had initially been skeptical that a 15-year-old could solve a problem that had stumped fleet scientists for 2 years. But as she watched Maya work and understood the elegance of her mathematical approach, Price became a true believer. 2 weeks into the voyage, the horizon reached the edge of the Kepler expanse. Maya stood on the bridge next to Captain Sanders, looking at the view screen that showed the region ahead. From the outside, the expanse looked like normal space. Stars shone in the darkness, distant and beautiful. But the ship's sensors told a different story. They detected fluctuations in space-time, areas where the normal laws of physics seemed to bend and twist. These fluctuations moved and changed in patterns that seemed almost random. Captain Sanders turned to Maya. "We are about to test your mathematics with our lives, Miss Johnson. Are you confident in your calculations?" Maya took a deep breath. She thought about all the work she had done, all the data she had analyzed, all the checking and rechecking of her equations. "I am confident," she said. "The mathematics is sound. If we follow the path my equations predict, we will make it through safely." Sanders nodded and gave the order. "Take us in, Foster. Follow Miss Johnson's navigation plan exactly." The horizon moved forward, crossing the invisible boundary into the Kepler expanse. Immediately, alarms began sounding. Sensors detected the dimensional fluctuations all around them. Normal navigation systems would have been overwhelmed, unable to plot a safe course through the constantly shifting dangers. But Maya's system was different. Her equations predicted where the fluctuations would occur before the sensors detected them. The navigation computer adjusted the ship's course continuously, threading through the invisible maze of dimensional instabilities. Maya sat at her console watching the data stream past. Her fingers moved across the controls, making minor adjustments in real time. The mathematics she had developed were working, but the reality of the expanse was even more complex than the models had predicted. She had to adapt her equations on the fly, incorporating new data as it came in. Beside her, Danny Foster monitored the ship's position and course. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air of the bridge. "Dimensional stress is increasing," he reported, his voice tense but professional. "If we were using standard navigation, we would be experiencing significant hull strain right now. But your system is keeping us in stable regions of space." Dr. Price watched her instruments, calling out readings. "Fluctuation pattern detected ahead. Intensity 7.3. Maya's fingers flew across her console, adjusting course by 0.04 degrees, increasing velocity by 2% to reach the stable corridor before the fluctuation moves. The ship responded smoothly to her commands. 4 hours passed as the horizon navigated through the Kepler expanse. Maya remained at her console the entire time, making constant tiny adjustments to their course. Her eyes burned from staring at the displays and her back ached from sitting so long without moving. But she did not dare take a break. Every moment required her full attention as she guided the ship through the dangerous space. The crew watched their progress with tense hope. They knew that 6 other ships had entered this region and never returned. They trusted Captain Sanders and they trusted Maya's mathematics, but fear was natural when traveling through space that had proven deadly. Finally, sensors detected the far edge of the expanse ahead. The dimensional fluctuations began to decrease in intensity. Danny Foster checked their position against the star charts and a huge smile spread across his face. "We are through," he announced. "We have crossed the entire expanse without any damage." The bridge crew erupted in cheers and applause. People hugged each other and shook hands. Captain Sanders walked over to Maya's console and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Excellent work, Miss Johnson. You just accomplished what many people thought was impossible." Maya leaned back in her chair, feeling exhaustion wash over her now that the danger had passed. But she also felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Her mathematics had worked. She had brought the ship and its crew safely through the deadliest region of known space. The celebrations continued for several minutes before Sanders called for order. "All right, people, excellent job. But we are not done yet. Foster, Price, Johnson, I want a full analysis of all the data we collected during our crossing. We need to understand everything that happened so we can create reliable navigation charts for future ships." Maya agreed and began downloading the sensor data from their journey. She would need to study it carefully to refine her equations and create navigation protocols that other ships could follow. That evening, Maya worked in her cabin, analyzing the data streams from their crossing. Dr. Price had joined her, and the two of them sat side by side, examining different aspects of the information they had gathered. The dimensional fluctuations had followed the patterns Maya's mathematics predicted, But there were subtle variations she wanted to understand better. As she mapped these variations over time, Maya noticed something strange. She pulled up a longer timeline, showing fluctuation data from the past 2 years collected by various probes and sensors. She overlaid this historical data with the readings from today's crossing. What she saw made her blood run cold. "Dr. Price, look at this," Maya said, her voice urgent. Helen Price moved closer to see what Maya was showing her. The display showed fluctuation patterns arranged on a timeline. Price studied it for a moment, then her eyes went wide. "These fluctuations are not random," Maya explained, her words coming quickly. "They follow a mathematical pattern. Look here and here and here. The pattern repeats every 47 days like clockwork. This is not a natural phenomenon. Someone or something is generating these dimensional instabilities deliberately." Price grabbed her tablet and began running calculations. She checked Maya's work from multiple angles, looking for any error that might explain what they were seeing. But after 20 minutes of intensive analysis, she had to accept the truth. "You are right," Price said quietly. "The fluctuations are artificial. But why would anyone create dangerous instabilities in this region of space? What possible purpose could it serve?" Maya was already pulling up more data. She created a 3-dimensional model, showing the fluctuation pattern over the past 5 years. The model revealed something even more disturbing. "The pattern is not just repeating," Maya said. "It is intensifying. Look at the amplitude of the fluctuations. 5 years ago, they were barely detectable. 2 years ago, they became strong enough to threaten ships. Now they are getting even stronger. If this trend continues, in 6 months, this entire region of space will be completely impassable. Ships will not be able to cross the expanse at all." The implications hit both of them at the same time. The Kepler expanse lay between Earth's core systems and the Andromeda colonies. Those colonies were home to 3 million humans living on 12 different planets. They depended on ships from Earth for supplies, technology, and contact with the rest of humanity. If the expanse became impassable, those colonies would be cut off completely. They would survive, but they would be isolated, alone in deep space. "We need to tell Captain Sanders immediately," Price said. Maya nodded, and they both headed for the bridge. They found Sanders in her ready room, reviewing reports from the day's journey. When Maya and Price explained what they had discovered, Sanders listened carefully, asking sharp questions. She was a good captain who understood the importance of what her science team was telling her. "If the fluctuations are artificial, there must be a source," Sanders said. "Can you trace the pattern to its origin?" Maya had been thinking about exactly that question. "Give me access to the ship's main computer and I can run the calculations. It will take time, but I believe I can determine where these fluctuations are being generated." Sanders granted permission immediately. Maya spent the rest of the night working on the problem. She drank coffee to stay awake and filled virtual pages with complex equations. The mathematical pattern was layered and intricate, like a signal encoded in multiple dimensions. But slowly, methodically, Maya began to unravel it. She traced the fluctuations backward through space and time, following their origin point. By morning, she had coordinates. The source of the fluctuations was located in the Sigma 47 system, a region of space 60 light-years deeper into the expanse than any human ship had ever traveled. The system was uncharted, marked on star maps only as a potential area for future exploration. Maya brought her findings to an emergency meeting in the ship's conference room. Captain Sanders was there along with her senior officers and Dr. Price. Maya displayed her data on the holographic projector in the center of the table. "Whatever is causing the dimensional fluctuations is here," she said, pointing to the Sigma 47 system. "Based on the pattern analysis, this is definitely the source. Something in that system is broadcasting or generating the fluctuations that are destabilizing the entire expanse." Commander Alex Turner, the ship's first officer, studied the star charts. "That is deep into unexplored space. We have no data on that system. There could be anything there." Sanders made her decision quickly. She was a captain who understood that some mysteries demanded investigation. "We are going to find out what is there, but we will need backup. I am not taking the Horizon into completely unknown space without support." Sanders sent an urgent message to Frontier Fleet Command, explaining what they had discovered and requesting reinforcements. The response came back within hours. Fleet Command recognized the importance of this discovery. If something was deliberately destabilizing the Kepler expanse, they needed to know what it was and why. 3 additional ships were dispatched to rendezvous with the Horizon. The FSS Valiant and the FSS Explorer were both science vessels similar to the Horizon. But the third ship was different. It was the cruiser Independence, a military vessel designed for combat and commanded by Admiral Gregory Palmer himself. Admiral Gregory Palmer was a man who commanded respect without demanding it. He was in his late 50s with iron gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent his entire adult life in military service. Palmer had fought in the border conflicts, explored dozens of unknown star systems, and earned a reputation as both a brilliant tactician and a careful leader who valued the lives of his crew. When he came aboard the Horizon to meet with Captain Sanders and her team, Maya felt slightly intimidated. This was one of the most important people in the entire frontier fleet. But Palmer put her at ease immediately. "Miss Johnson," he said, shaking her hand warmly, "I have been following your work since that classroom video went viral. What you did there was impressive. What you have accomplished here is extraordinary. You may have just prevented a catastrophe." The 4 ships traveled together toward the Sigma 47 system, following navigation paths calculated by Maya's equations. With her mathematics guiding them, the journey that should have taken weeks was completed in just 36 hours. Maya worked around the clock, refining her calculations and plotting safe routes through the increasingly intense dimensional fluctuations. She barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination. Dr. Price worried about her pushing herself so hard, but Maya insisted she was fine. There would be time to rest later. Right now, they were on the edge of a discovery that could change everything. As they approached the Sigma 47 system, sensors began detecting something unusual. The system contained a dying star, its fusion processes winding down after billions of years of burning. 3 dead planets orbited the star, their surfaces cold and lifeless. But there was something else in the system, something that made every scientist on every ship stop and stare at their displays in disbelief. A massive structure hung in stable orbit around the star. It was enormous, easily 50 kilometers across, built from materials that seemed to shimmer and shift as they looked at it. The structure was geometric but in ways that hurt to look at, as if it existed in more dimensions than human eyes could properly perceive. Sensors struggled to get accurate readings from it. The structure seemed to phase in and out of normal space, existing partially in dimensions that humans could not directly observe. But one thing was absolutely clear. The structure was artificial. Someone or something had built it, and it was the source of the dimensional fluctuations that were destabilizing the Kepler expanse. "My God," Admiral Palmer whispered as he stared at the image on the viewscreen. The words seemed inadequate for what they were seeing. Maya stood on the Horizon's bridge, unable to tear her eyes away from the structure. This was first contact with alien technology. This was proof that humanity was not alone in the universe. Every child dreamed of this moment, imagined what it would be like to discover evidence of other intelligent life. But Maya had never imagined it would happen to her. Captain Sanders ordered all 4 ships to maintain a safe distance while they studied the structure. Lieutenant Chris Morgan, the Horizon's chief sensor technician, worked to gather as much data as possible. "I am detecting no life signs," Morgan reported. "But the structure is definitely active. It is drawing massive amounts of energy directly from the star's core, through some kind of dimensional tap. That energy is being used to generate the fluctuations we have been detecting." Dr. Price was already analyzing the structure's composition and design. "The materials are unlike anything in our database. The atomic structure appears normal, but the way the atoms are arranged defies our understanding of physics. And the age. Based on stellar drift calculations and radiation decay, this structure has been here for millions of years, possibly tens of millions." For 2 days, the 4 ships maintained their position while every scientist aboard worked to understand what they were looking at. Probes were sent to examine the structure more closely, returning data that raised more questions than it answered. The technology was so far beyond human capability that they could barely comprehend what they were seeing. It was like showing a smartphone to someone from the Middle Ages and asking them to explain how it worked. The structure seemed to be some kind of broadcasting device, but what it was broadcasting and why remained mysteries. Maya studied the mathematical patterns in the energy output, looking for meaning in the numbers. She had always believed that mathematics was a universal language. If this structure had been built by intelligent beings, there should be mathematical patterns she could recognize and understand. On the evening of the second day, she found something. The energy fluctuations follow a Fibonacci sequence, Maya announced to the senior staff during a briefing. It is subtle and layered with other patterns, but it is definitely there. The Fibonacci sequence appears throughout nature and mathematics. Any spacefaring civilization would recognize it. I think whoever built this structure left mathematical markers deliberately, like breadcrumbs for other intelligent species to follow. Admiral Palmer leaned forward with interest. Can you follow these breadcrumbs? Can you decode what they are trying to communicate? Maya hesitated. I can try, but I will need time and access to every piece of data we have collected. Palmer nodded. You have whatever you need, Miss Johnson. This is the most important discovery in human history. If we can learn something from this structure, from whoever built it, it could advance our civilization by centuries. Maya threw herself into the work with even more intensity than before. She barely left her cabin except to grab food and consult with Dr. Price. She covered her walls with holographic displays, showing different aspects of the structure's energy patterns. She ran countless simulations and calculations, looking for meaning in the mathematical sequences. Sleep became something she did in brief snatches, waking every few hours with new ideas to test. Dr. Price tried to get her to rest properly, but Maya refused. She could feel that she was close to understanding something important. The answer was there in the numbers, waiting for her to see it. On the third day since arriving at the structure, everything changed. The structure itself changed. New frequencies activated in its energy output, frequencies that had not been present before. The dimensional fluctuations shifted into different patterns. Alarm klaxons sounded on all 4 ships as sensors detected the changes. Maya was at her console when it happened. She watched the data transform before her eyes and suddenly understood. It knows we are here, she said. The structure detected our presence. It is reacting to us. On the view screen, a holographic projection began forming in space near the structure. The projection grew larger and larger until it was visible to all 4 ships. It showed star charts, but not of the Milky Way galaxy. These were maps of somewhere else, some other region of space that humans had never seen. The projection shifted and new images appeared. They showed mathematical formulas, scientific principles, technological designs. The information was being presented in a way that any sufficiently advanced civilization could understand. Universal mathematical language combined with visual representations of complex concepts. Then words appeared in the projection, written in perfect English. Maya stared at them in shock. You solved the puzzle. We have been waiting. The words hung in space like a message from the universe itself. Every person on every ship stared at them, trying to process what they meant. The structure had been waiting for someone to find it, someone to understand the mathematical patterns, someone to solve the puzzle of the dimensional fluctuations. Maya had done exactly that. By navigating through the Kepler expanse and tracing the patterns to their source, she had proven that humanity possessed the intelligence the structure was testing for. Captain Sanders was the first to find her voice. Miss Johnson, I believe you just made first contact with an alien intelligence. But was it truly first contact if the intelligence was not present anymore? Over the following days, the structure revealed its purpose and its history. The information came in carefully measured segments, as if the structure understood that too much knowledge at once would overwhelm its audience. The story it told was both inspiring and sobering. The structure had been built by a species that called themselves the architects. They had achieved technological sophistication millions of years before humans existed. They had mastered the laws of physics in ways humanity was only beginning to understand. They had learned to manipulate dimensions, to draw power from stars, to transcend the limitations of physical matter itself. Eventually, the architects had evolved beyond the need for physical bodies entirely. They had become beings of pure energy and consciousness, existing in dimensions that physical matter could not reach. Before they transcended, the architects had looked at the universe and seen a problem. Intelligent life was rare, precious, and vulnerable. Most species that achieved spaceflight eventually destroyed themselves through war, environmental catastrophe, or simple carelessness. The architects wanted to help, but they could not do so directly. Species needed to develop on their own, to learn their own lessons, to prove themselves worthy of advancement. So the architects created a solution. They built thousands of structures like this one and scattered them across the universe. Each structure was both a test and a gift. The dimensional fluctuations created by the structures were dangerous enough to be noticed by any spacefaring civilization. The mathematical patterns hidden in those fluctuations were complex enough that only truly intelligent species would recognize them and understand what they meant. Species that could solve the puzzle, that could navigate the dangerous space and trace the patterns to their source, proved they had the necessary combination of intelligence, courage, and persistence. Those species were deemed ready to receive the gift the architects had left behind. The structure began downloading information directly into the computer systems of all 4 ships. The amount of data was staggering, measured in petabytes. It included detailed scientific knowledge about physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics. It contained designs for technology far beyond anything humans currently possessed. New propulsion systems that could cross the galaxy in months instead of years. Energy generation methods that could power entire planets from devices the size of a house. Medical treatments that could cure diseases and extend human life by centuries. Maya sat in the Horizons conference room with Captain Sanders, Admiral Palmer, Dr. Price, and the senior officers from all 4 ships. They were attempting to comprehend the magnitude of what they had been given. This is knowledge that would normally take a civilization thousands of years to develop on their own, Dr. Price said, her voice filled with wonder. The architects have just accelerated our technological development by millennia. Admiral Palmer was more cautious. We need to be careful with this. Knowledge without wisdom can be dangerous. We have seen what happens when powerful technology falls into the wrong hands. Captain Sanders nodded in agreement. The information will need to be released carefully, studied thoroughly, implemented gradually. This cannot be rushed. But Maya was focused on something else. The structure had included a warning along with all the gifts. She pulled up the relevant section and displayed it for everyone to see. The universe is entering a phase shift, Maya explained. It is a natural cycle that occurs every 500 million years. Space-time itself undergoes fundamental changes during these shifts. Civilizations that are not prepared, that do not have sufficiently advanced technology, will not survive the transition. That is why the architects left these structures. They wanted to give younger species a chance to develop the knowledge they would need. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. How long do we have? Admiral Palmer asked. Maya checked the data. According to the architect's calculations, the phase shift will begin in approximately 800 years. That may sound like a long time, but developing and implementing the technology we need to survive will take centuries of work. We need to start now. The weight of responsibility settled over everyone in the room. They had been given incredible gifts, but also a daunting challenge. Humanity's survival depended on what they did with the knowledge they had received. Over the next 2 weeks, scientists from all 4 ships worked to catalog and understand the data the structure had provided. Maya found herself at the center of this effort. The architect's knowledge was presented using advanced mathematics as its foundation. To understand the technology, you first had to understand the mathematical principles underlying it. Maya's gift for mathematics made her uniquely qualified to interpret and explain what they had been given. She worked with teams of physicists and engineers, translating the architect's mathematical language into concepts humans could grasp. It was exhausting work, but also exhilarating. Every day brought new discoveries and new understanding. The structure also answered a question that had haunted Maya since that day in Professor Hayes's classroom. Why had this happened to her? Why had she been the one to recognize the flaw in that impossible equation? Why had her solution attracted the attention that led her here? The structure's message was clear on this point. The architects had not chosen Maya specifically, but they had designed their test to favor certain qualities. Intelligence, certainly, but also persistence in the face of challenges. The ability to see past surface appearances to underlying truth. The courage to stand up when others tried to push you down. Maya had demonstrated all these qualities when Professor Hayes tried to humiliate her. She had not responded with anger or given up in frustration. She had calmly proven her excellence through undeniable achievement. In a way, Hayes's prejudice had been the first test, and Maya had passed it perfectly. You understand what this means? Admiral Palmer said to Maya during one of their many conversations. You have changed the course of human history, not just because you found this structure, but because of who you are and how you responded to adversity. The architects were waiting for someone like you. Maya felt uncomfortable with such praise. I just solved math problems. Anyone with the right training could have done the same. Palmer shook his head. You are wrong about that. Many people have the training. Few have the character. Your teacher tried to use your identity against you, tried to make you feel like you did not belong. You responded by proving beyond any doubt that you belonged more than he did. That took more than intelligence. That took strength. Maya thought about that conversation for a long time afterward. She had never seen herself as particularly brave or strong. She had simply refused to let prejudice define her capabilities. She had insisted on being judged by her actual abilities rather than other people's assumptions. Apparently, that was exactly the quality the architects had been looking for. 3 months after first discovering the architect's structure, the 4 ships began their journey back to Earth. They carried with them the most important cargo in human history. The knowledge gifted by the architects would transform human civilization in ways both profound and subtle. But before any of that transformation could begin, the information needed to be brought home safely. The return journey was much faster than the outbound trip had been. Maya's navigation mathematics had been refined and improved through all the data collected during their mission. What had once taken weeks now took only days. The Kepler expanse, which had seemed so dangerous and mysterious, was now thoroughly understood. Ships could cross it safely using the protocols Maya had developed. The Andromeda colonies would never be cut off from Earth. Trade and communication would flow freely across what had once been an impassable barrier. As they traveled, Maya spent time thinking about everything that had happened. Just 4 months ago, she had been an ordinary student, albeit a talented one, attending classes at Stellar Academy. Now she was returning as the person who had made first contact with ancient alien intelligence. She had decoded the architect's message. She had proven humanity worthy of joining the ranks of truly advanced civilizations. The weight of it all felt surreal, like it had happened to someone else, but it had happened to her, and she would need to figure out what came next. Dr. Price spent many hours talking with Maya during the return journey. The older scientist had become something of a mentor to her. "You realize your life will never be the same," Price said one evening as they sat in the observation lounge, watching stars stream past. "You are going to be famous beyond anything you have experienced so far. Everyone will want to meet you, to talk to you, to understand how you did what you did." Maya sighed. "I know. Part of me wishes I could just go back to being a student, studying mathematics without all this attention." Price smiled gently. "That was never going to be your path. You are too gifted, too special. The universe had plans for you whether you wanted them or not." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Price spoke again. "What will you do when we get back? You could work anywhere, do anything. Every university and research institution in human space will be competing for you." Maya had been thinking about exactly that question. "I want to go back to Stellar Academy. I want to teach." Price looked surprised. "Teach? You could be leading research teams, running major scientific projects. Why would you want to teach?" Maya's answer came from deep conviction. "Because Professor Hayes was wrong. Not just about me, but about education and opportunity. He thought some people did not deserve to be in his classroom. He judged potential based on appearances rather than ability. I want to teach because I want to be the opposite of him. I want to show every student who walks into my classroom that their worth is determined by their effort and intelligence, not by the color of their skin or any other external factor." The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks total. As they approached the home system, traffic control was overwhelmed with requests from news organizations wanting to interview the crew. The story of the architect's structure had been sent ahead through faster-than-light communications. The entire human civilization knew that first contact had been made, that ancient alien knowledge had been discovered, and that a 15-year-old girl named Maya Johnson had been at the center of it all. When the Horizon finally docked at Earth Station 7, a crowd of thousands had gathered to witness their arrival. Maya stood with Captain Sanders and the rest of the crew, looking out at the sea of faces. She saw her parents in the front row, tears streaming down their faces as they waited to embrace their daughter. She saw Dean Wong from Stellar Academy smiling with pride. She saw government officials, scientists, military officers, and ordinary people who had come simply to be part of this historic moment. The United Earth Council requested that Maya address them directly. 2 days after returning home, she stood before the council chambers, a room designed to hold the representatives of every human colony and nation. The chamber was circular with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Thousands of people sat in those seats, and billions more watched through live broadcast transmitted to every corner of human space. Maya wore a simple blue dress, refusing the formal clothing that had been offered to her. She wanted to be herself, not some dressed-up version created for public consumption. She stood at the podium and began to speak, her voice clear and steady despite her nervousness. 3 months ago, I was a student in a classroom. My teacher gave me a problem that was designed to make me fail. He did this because he did not believe I belonged in his classroom. He judged me by my appearance rather than my abilities. Maya paused, looking around the enormous chamber. But I solved his impossible problem. And that solution began a chain of events that led to the most important discovery in human history. I want you to understand something crucial. I'm not special because I am uniquely gifted. I am special because I was given opportunities and I took them. I had teachers who believed in me even when others did not. I had access to education that challenged me and helped me grow. Most importantly, I was not held back by people who thought I did not deserve those opportunities. How many other Maya Johnsons are out there right now? How many brilliant minds are being overlooked because of prejudice? How many potential discoveries are being lost because we fail to recognize talent when it does not look the way we expect it to look? The architects left us a test and we passed it. But I believe they were testing more than our intelligence. They were testing our character, our ability to see past our own limitations and prejudices. If we want to truly earn the gift they have given us, we need to make sure that everyone, regardless of who they are or where they come from, has the chance to reach their full potential. The council chamber erupted in applause. People stood and clapped until their hands hurt. Maya's words had struck a chord that resonated across human civilization. In the weeks and months that followed, her speech was played and replayed, quoted and discussed. It became a rallying cry for educational reform and equal opportunity. Maya received the Nobel Prize in Physics 3 months after returning to Earth. At 16 years old, she was the youngest recipient in the prize's history. She accepted the award with grace and used her acceptance speech to once again emphasize the importance of opportunity and education for all. She was offered positions at every major research institution in human space. Universities competed to have her join their faculty. Corporations wanted to hire her to help implement the architect's technology. But Maya kept the promise she had made to herself. She returned to Stellar Academy as a professor, the youngest in the institution's history. Professor Martin Hayes watched all of this unfold from a distance. He had been suspended from teaching after the incident in his classroom, and during that suspension he had been forced to confront his own prejudices. He had spent months in counseling and diversity training, learning to recognize and challenge his own biases. When he heard that Maya would be teaching at Stellar Academy, Hayes made a difficult decision. He contacted Dean Wong and requested permission to audit Maya's classes. He wanted to learn from the person he had wronged. Wong was surprised by the request but agreed to allow it. On the first day of Maya's first class, the lecture hall was packed with students. Word had spread that Maya Johnson herself would be teaching advanced mathematics. Every seat was filled, and more students stood along the walls, unwilling to miss this opportunity. In the back row, mostly hidden among the eager young faces, sat Martin Hayes. He had a notebook in front of him and a pen in his hand, ready to take notes like a first-year student. Maya walked to the front of the lecture hall and looked out at her students. She saw their excitement and their hope. She saw their diversity, students of every background and appearance united by their love of mathematics and learning. And in the back, she saw Professor Hayes looking older and humbler than she remembered. Their eyes met for a moment. Maya nodded slightly, acknowledging his presence. Hayes nodded back, a gesture that contained both apology and respect. Then Maya smiled, a warm, genuine smile that welcomed everyone in the room equally. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Johnson, and I am excited to be teaching this class. Today we are going to begin exploring dimensional mathematics and the practical applications that make space travel possible. But before we dive into the equations, I want to tell you something important. Mathematics is a language that belongs to everyone. It does not care about the color of your skin, your gender, your background, or where you come from. Mathematics only cares about the truth. In this classroom, you will all be judged solely on your effort, your curiosity, and your willingness to learn. Nothing else matters. She began writing equations on the holographic display, and the students leaned forward, absorbing every word and every symbol. Hayes took careful notes, learning not just mathematics but also humility, and the proper way to educate and inspire. Outside the academy, the work of integrating the architect's knowledge into human civilization continued. New ships were designed and built using dimensional drive technology,